Welcome to the Armenian American Health Professionals Town Hall. We started in September, and we just keep on going as the crisis demands. The purpose of these town halls is for all of us to learn more evidence-based medicine so we can make more informed decision for our respective organizations and lead our community through this crisis. It has been truly heartwarming to see how everybody is working in unison. What's amazing to me is that I'm meeting nurses, I'm meeting businessmen, I'm meeting philanthropists and other doctors who I've lived with in our Armenian community, but have never met before. And they say, I have 9 boxes. I just got a call saying I have several respirators that I can donate. It's been amazing. So we believe we will overcome this, and we'll overcome this united in our defense of Artsakh as this war goes on. And I'm so grateful to Anthony Barsamian, who's joined us tonight as the Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Board of the Armenian Assembly. I'd also like to welcome Brian Arduni, who is making his 4th appearance today. He's been incredible, not only in his work in Washington, but informing all of us as to what is going on in Washington and how we can all help. We are so fortunate to have Eric Smith. Eric Smith is a well-known person, a public relations media expert who works in Washington, I believe. He works with all nonprofits. He works with individuals on complex public affairs and crisis situations, just like what we're in, through multiple industries and sectors. As far as the virus goes, it is ticking along. It's doing its thing like any good virus. Unfortunately, it's affected over 38.8 million people in the world. This week, the United States will break the 8 million mark. It's so hard to believe. When we started, we were talking about onesie, twosies, and now we're talking about 8 million.
I know that we're going to be talking about the war, and that honestly does supersede. I don't want to pretend on this call that we're not all incredibly, incredibly worried about the existential threat of our lands and our existence. But meanwhile, we have a COVID crisis going on in Armenia, and it would behoove all of us in the West to utilize whatever leverage and resources we have to try to remind Armenians in Armenia to understand what's happening. This is a slide you guys have seen. We have a group on Saturdays, as you know, that puts this data together. Aras Chiloyan puts this data together from the Ministry of Health data. This is from March, when we had our first case. We peaked at the end of June, as many of you remember, and then sort of as they did more enforcement of mask wearing and so on and so forth, they started to be able to sort of keep the cases under control. These bars represent a 7-day rolling average, but to give you, this data was collated last Sunday, so to give you some sense of the scope, today we had 1,400 cases reported, and the highest number of cases reported ever. When we update this every Sunday, you'll see that we're going to be off of this chart. Basically, we're going to have to change the scale of the chart. If you are familiar with the University of Washington Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, they do modeling around the world on COVID. These are the models and projections that they're making without having human input for the knowledge about the war situation, but just looking at the daily averages going up. You'll see that, and this is deaths, by the way. This is COVID deaths. I could have put on multiple slides, but I'm just doing 4 slides today. And this would be total number of deaths, which you can see hovered around 1,000 total from the beginning of the epidemic in March. Armenia has closed schools. They've sent people to be working from home. There's a renewed effort to try to encourage the population to use masks and socially distance, and so the projections are probably somewhere around here in the purple range, which again is, is a double or tripling of the total number of COVID related deaths. For those of you who don't know, there was a woman I worked with closely in my early years at the American University of Armenia, Sona Hamalian, and she passed away last night in Yerevan from COVID. So this is an ongoing issue, and it's tough because during war and everyone's packing in the churches and the funerals, and of course these are opportunities for spread. So we anticipate for the next 2 weeks that there's going to be a skyrocketing exponential growth in COVID. And what does this mean? Why is this important during the war to discuss this topic? And so in time of war, it's just an incredibly burdensome to be managing the health services resources necessary to treat war injuries and displaced populations, at the same time managing the resources necessary to manage the epidemic. So what has been happening in this last couple of weeks, aside from some of the major policy changes of changing, for example, the closing the schools and things like that, is there have been greater messages that are going, there have been press conferences, the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister even has talked a lot about the importance of mask wearing. And this is a group of students from the American University of Armenia who have gone out. They've created like this youth brigade to go out and pass, masks out. And then today I saw this was actually posted by a relatively senior public health policymaker in the Ministry of Health. And there was a message that went with it that, that shows obviously the tie-in with the war.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Anthony Barsamian. He is energetic. He has so many responsibilities. He's the chairman of the board of the Armenian Assembly of America. Thank you so much for joining us, Anthony.
The Armenian Assembly is a 501c3 organization that works in Washington, promoting public advocacy and Armenian American issues as it relates to U.S.-Armenia relations. There's a new policy statement that came out last night. Things are moving so fast, it's really hard to get things out. But if you go to Facebook, look at my Facebook page, and I think it's out there on the Biden website. Vice President Biden came out with his policy position on Armenia, on the Armenian genocide, and on Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh. And we do have influence in some respects in giving them our input, but it's something that they come up with. It's not something that we do. So if you look at the Artsakh position, you'll see that he calls out Turkey. He calls out that Turkey should stay out of Artsakh, and also that the mercenaries, for the first time, the mercenary language was put in the position paper. And of course, with the genocide, he's made it very clear that when he becomes president, he will recognize the Armenian genocide. I know we've heard it before, but we've had a 30-year history with Joe Biden, and I believe strongly that on this one, Joe Biden really believes it in his heart. I've heard multiple times. It happened to me. We walked up to see him once, and he said, the Armenian genocide should be recognized. I just said my name, and that's happened multiple times. I know Carolyn, I think, has the same story. Let's turn to Artsakh. Obviously, very, very serious situation right now. Probably the most serious situation Armenia has faced as an independent country since the original war with Artsakh and the earthquake days. And we should treat it as that. Every Armenian should give to the Armenia Fund, should be telling their friends. I am getting non-Armenians asking me where to contribute, and we're saying the Armenia Fund. The Armenian Assembly has a $1 million match. So we have $1 million, and we'll match it with another $1 million. So that's growing, and I know that the HBU has a similar $5 million match, which I believe they're close. And I talked to Berj Setraki, and I think they're going to do more on that. And I think every organization, ARS, all the organizations, all the relief organizations, anyone out there is doing what they can, and we are all working together. You've seen many protests around the country, around the world. That is getting traction. People are understanding that Turkey is the culprit here, and Turkey needs to get out. I'm going to wrap here with one thing. Many of you probably have seen it, but some may have not seen the American conservative piece on Azerbaijan and how much they spend on lobbying. And as you know, last year they spent $1.3 million on lobbying. We have Eric Smith and his group, which he'll talk a little bit about. So we're working with basically two groups in Washington right now. I believe the Armenian Embassy is working with a group as well. But the Azeris are working with 6 groups, and they're paying, you know, $1.3 million for those 6 groups. And their names like the Livingston Group, Stellar J Communications, BGR, Podesta Group, and DLA Piper. We may have heard that Kamala Harris's husband works for DLA Piper, so there's a little bit of news yesterday asking him to step down because they lobby for Azerbaijan. I think Armenia is in the right here, and I think the world understands a humanitarian and a Christian country being attacked by 2 countries with very unstable leaders. And unfortunately, it's not a great situation, but it's a situation that Armenia has been in for centuries. So this is nothing new. The only new thing is we are more sophisticated now. We are more unified now. And we have organizations like your medical group that works weekly to do the right thing, to get supplies to Armenia, to work on health policy for Armenia. This wasn't the case at the beginning. This is the case now. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about Eric Smith, and then I'll hand it back over to Larry. But Eric has worked with the Armenian Assembly for well over a decade. So the good thing about Eric is when we called him, he wasn't a public relations person or firm that had to get up to speed. He knew the Armenian issue. He had worked in Congress at the highest levels. He's a Lebanese American from the Massachusetts, so he understands our issues and has worked with us. And that's really been very helpful to have Eric come in, strategize with us. And I'm going to pass it back to Larry so he can introduce Eric Smith as the next speaker.
Thank you so much for that wonderful summary of the Armenian Assembly. Actually, one of the early leaders of this organization was Haigas Gregorian, and I believe he was involved with the establishment of the Armenian Assembly as well.
Wonderful man.
He was very much missed. Eric, it's really just such a pleasure to meet you virtually. And also nice to know we share similar heritages. We look forward to your talk this evening and a little bit learning more about what you do for all the Armenian communities. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Larry, for inviting me. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks to all of you for all you're doing. It's been fascinating listening to this call so far. You know, when these attacks started on September 27th, as Anthony said, it wasn't just a military attack, but a communications campaign as well. A really well-coordinated one and a well-prepared one. Anthony and Brian Arduni, who you hear from, and myself and our team have been trying to play catch up ever since. So we've been working very hard to try and make sure that the Armenian side of this conversation is heard and that it makes its way to not just the American public, but to influential policymakers and elected officials. And to do that, we've really focused on on 3 areas, and I'll walk through them quickly, and then I'm mindful of time. First is earned media or you know, kind of traditional PR. This one's been a real challenge, and I'll be honest with you, because what we found is that most of major American news organizations are running their coverage out of Moscow. And it's been really kind of, there's a real challenge in being able to try and get in front of those reporters and talk to them. What we have done is we've been aggressively reaching out to editors and writers here in the United States to make sure that they're aware of our messaging and our concerns and the urgency of the situation. And we've been putting spokespeople in front of them to make sure that when they're writing about this and when they're reporting on it, that they are doing so accurately and with as much information as possible. The second thing we've been doing is really trying to flood the zone on opinion pieces. You know, we think the opinion page gives us some real estate that we can go and make a longer form coherent argument. We've had a piece run in the Boston Globe. We've got pieces in front of the Washington Post and New York Times right now. We also have Franklin Graham, Congresswoman Jackie Spears, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, Senator Ed Markey, who we're all working with us now on op-eds that we're going to place, and we are looking for more. In fact, I don't know if you guys have heard of an organization in Washington run by Grover Norquist, but it's a right of center coalition of conservative Republican groups. We actually brought Brian in there this week, this Wednesday, And we're finding that some of those groups are already offering to write op-eds on their own and bring a kind of right of center voice to this, which is great. The third piece that we've really been battling on is social media. We're up against a really sophisticated social media campaign. The campaign, our efforts there have really been two-pronged. One is to get our conversation into people's inboxes or into their feeds and timelines as much as possible. But we've also been playing a little bit of defense, and we've been using our relationship with Facebook to talk to them about a lot of these Azeri accounts, which are government run or using kind of fake cutout fronts. And Facebook has actually taken a lot of those accounts down or blocked them, and that's been a real success. Facebook's talked about a little bit. They don't want to talk about it a lot, but they are limiting a lot of these kind of bot accounts that were kind of affecting the algorithm and taking them down, so that we're having some success leveling the playing field. As we move forward, we want to keep doing this. What we want to do is enlist more people to write letters to the editor, to write op-eds, to share social media, and even to reach out to your own editors and reporters at your local papers, because hearing from the community really helps. And we put a toolbox together which has all this content. So ideally, if folks are interested and want to be helpful, we can kind of get you a packet of material that you can adapt however you like and share in the form of social media posts, op-eds, letters to the editors, and other things.
On the legislative front, the Armenian Assembly is also working with Brian Arduni. Brian, last time we were together, it was the day before Congress was going into recess, and you were ready to pull an all-nighter after an all-nighter the night before, trying to get passage. Can you give us some legislative updates, please?
Yes, thank you. And the bill we were talking about was HRES 1165 that Congresswoman Jackie Spear introduced. She introduced it, just days after the fighting started, and was trying to get it through before Congress recessed. Obviously, we saw that didn't happen. They weren't able to do it. Part of the challenge was when they recessed on Friday, they were still in pro forma session. And again, not to get into a whole bunch of technical details at almost 10 o'clock at night, but basically what that means is if anything is to come up before the House, before the election, before they're in session again, it has to happen by unanimous consent. And as everyone will recall from the Senate debate on the Armenian Genocide Resolution, when Senator Menendez and Cruz were trying to bring up the resolution, any one senator could object for any reason related or unrelated to the bill. So what that means for the resolution is members of Congress have a outsized weight to stop it from happening. What we have is our two main action alerts. One is to urge passage of the resolution, HRES 1165. So to keep that going, members of Congress still need to hear from us. They still need to know that we're concerned about this. I've said many times, if we're not in Washington, D.C. talking about, the issues we care about, then who is? And, the benevolent answer would be, well, no one's really talking about Armenian issues. But in actuality, we know if we're not talking about those issues, we have two very forceful adversaries, and they are talking about our issues, and they are trying to paint a narrative and whitewash what they're doing. So that's why it's very important to continue to take action. So the urged passage of HRES 1165 is still active and ongoing. And then the other thing we're doing, since the president, his medium of communication is Twitter, we have a direct tweet campaign to the president calling on him to stop military assistance to Azerbaijan and Turkey, and to urge an immediate ceasefire. So all those are underway. Eric had mentioned the Facebook work behind the scenes in terms of the Azeri propaganda and the bots, etc. But there's also the news about Facebook banning all Holocaust denial, removing Holocaust denial material. So in the middle of all of this, we also have a campaign with Facebook to end all genocide denial, not just Armenian genocide, but all genocides, Rwanda, obviously, et cetera. And while we internally thought about it for a minute, we didn't want to distract from, our main focus, but at the same time, really, when you think about it, and I know everyone on this call has thought about it, what's happening right now, is very eerie, the specter of another potential genocide. So, having this Facebook campaign in parallel, I think is timely and important, given the context of what is happening. So let me really just sort of pause there. It's still full on blast, if you will, for contacting members of Congress. So if anyone hasn't taken action on these two, please do. The more voices, the better. Obviously, many members of Congress have already spoken out, but we need more and more voices. So please continue to do that. And then finally, I would say that in terms of, Anthony mentioned our office in DC, but we're also very fortunate. We have an office in Yerevan. We have office, we had an office in Artsakh, and then we also have an office in LA. So we're also able to get, first person, reporting, if you will, especially from Armenia, which is also vitally important.
First, I want to compliment the Armenian Medical International Committee. We're trying to bring order to total chaos. The communications are getting better. The idea of Dr. Kim Akimian's, where we put all the supply needs on a Google Drive, we can have multiple people accessing it, has now been implemented. So thank you so much for that idea. SALPI is actually on the receiving end of a worldwide emails with this list and that list. Salpi, how are you coping is the first question.
Well, thank you, Larry. We're doing fine. I have a team of people from the foundation who we meet in the morning. We do the briefing, and then in the evening we debrief to make sure all the lists coming nonstop from all over the world that we're able to enter. So we're up to date. We received your list, Larry, so that's right now being entered. We've received some from France. So it's a live list, as you said. So what we did today, though, we created another tab in that one big link where we identified, not we, the Armenia side, the Ministry of Health identified the immediate needs, if it be for medications, supplies, and equipment. So when you go into that link, that's the first tab. You can look into it if you want to focus what's the most needed items right now. So, and the master list, though, has everything that we have collected, whoever has notified us. Of course, there's much more out there, but we have entered whatever we have received. We're working nonstop. The phones, the text messages, emails. 2 or 3 of my members were pretty much in front of the computer all day long trying to deal with these issues.
It was very interesting what Brian Arduni said about the law that might allow U.S. government to ship humanitarian aid. So I'm not going to hold our breath. I think we should still pursue all the venues that we are, but that would be one helpful sign. Also, we did get the donation of warehouse space from an Armenian whose storage facility is very close to the George Washington Bridge. It's accessible by all the state and interstate highways. So Sarah Hartunian has been very gracious. Not only that, he does do international trade. All the boxes of medical supplies I'm bringing to him, he is packing in number 62 boxes. This is the cargo box that he's recommended and uses, and he will palletize everything and ready for shipment. So perhaps there's other benefactors in other cities that we can use as magnets for these donated medical goods, which are totally inventoried prior to the packing. And we'll share that list with Salpi. We also are working with a large Armenian rug dealer, Michael Halabian, and he's got trucks up and down the Connecticut, New Jersey, Maryland areas. and he's helping us pick up pallets from hospitals. So we're working on that end, and maybe the best thing is, since Tigran is so busy, is we'll try to collate everything and centralize everything that we're getting in that one warehouse location.
I just want to thank all of you for your efforts, everything what you're doing for Armenia. You're getting together, you know, AAHPO or AMIC, all of you guys, healthcare professionals, not healthcare professionals. I think we don't need a crisis to get together. My point is, you know, earthquake, somehow we get together, then everything is subsided down. Now another crisis. We have to work as a nation, so unified. We have to keep all social media on the ground, Senate, Congress, everywhere, because we need to work so close each other, because you are not as many as Azeris or Turks, and we don't have oil. Unfortunately, we have strong mindset and strong army and strong spirit. And I think we need to use all of this to be able to go forward. And I cannot thank all of you for everything what you're doing for Armenia. Donations, Armenia need money, a lot of money. Its weapons are extremely expensive. The Smerch, what our weapons are using, each shot it's 30,000. Smerch uses 12 shots to do one, which is $360,000 to do one shot of Smerch. So much money is going on weapons, which means only way we can survive to have enough weapons, because nobody else helping us as of today. We're not getting any help from Russia. We're not getting any help from Iran or any other countries. And only money. I think pretty much Armenian Fund doing great job, you know, collecting money, matching, AGBU matching, you know, ANCA is matching. I think this is the only way we can go forward. And if you look the numbers, you were talking about HPV, you know, cervical cancer kills 150 women a year in Armenia. 2 weeks of the war killed 650 young Armenians. All right, those are 22 years old with bright future people, and they're died because of the war, which means I think we need to do a lot of things to stop this war. There is no question about this. And we have to work together, use anything what we can do to push our Congress, our government to recognize Artsakh as a country. Today, actually, yesterday was nice piece was published in one of the editorials. It's national interest. It's called "Why America Should Explore Relations with Artsakh." It was published by Michael Rubin, and he's actually pretty much, it's very nicely, he summarizes why America needs to recognize Artsakh, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I hope this will be distributed, and I tweeted this piece for everybody to be able to read. I think we're going to be strong, and we'll be able to win. We'll be able to go forward. We just need to work together.
Thank you, Sam, for being such a patriot, always standing up, always thinking of Armenia. We certainly appreciate your voice here, and we appreciate, Armenia appreciates your voice when you visit the homeland. So thank you very much.